call. We got Shane who's calling in from Massachusetts. Shane, you are live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Welcome.
Hey, ObjectivelyDan and Demonstryde. What's up, guys?
How's it going, man?
Going good. Enjoying the Friday. It's been pretty chill so far. So what's up?
Well, Demonstryde is one of my new online Discord buddies. We discuss this shit like all day long. Him on the opposing side, but yeah, I wanted to call in and show him some support. Also, Dan, you got a goofy ass straw man behind you. Did you know that?
Okay, so here's what you need to know, Shane. There's a reason why Demonstride is laughing is because he literally told me before the show, like 10 minutes before the show started, when I put this as a background, that I was going to get called out and say that this isn't actually a reflection of flat earthers' beliefs. So that is very interesting you point that out.
Yeah, you bastard, dude. Demonstride. He did that on purpose. He knows that's nonsense. Space pizza disc floating in nothing. We don't actually subscribe to the content of space as it's relayed. We don't think it's a place you can go, as NASA likes to lie to us all the time. So to put it in space is kind of like a double jibe, and it's also building a straw man to attack that isn't actually our position.
Yeah, I mean, I could argue that maybe this is more subscribed to other kinds of beliefs. I mean, you have to agree that the flat Earth community has a pretty varied ideas about what exactly the cosmology of our universe is. So I would argue at least one flat earther probably thinks this is the case,
Zero.
but you think it's absolutely zero.
Zero.
Okay. Well, you're more involved in the flat earth community than I am, so I can take your word for it for right now. But Shane, here let's get to the bottom of this. Okay, I don't believe that the earth is flat, and you do. Why do you think the earth is flat?
Well, I mean, every basic observation, everything you see. Let's try this. Why do you think the seasons happen?
Why do I think the seasons happen? Well, I think that's an interplay between the Earth's relationship with the sun. I think it has to deal with things like the axial tilt and also how the Earth orbits around the sun. But that is pretty much my idea of it. I'm not a physicist or an astronomer by any means, but that's kind of the idea I have. Do you agree with that, Demon Stride, or do you have a more specific idea?
Yeah, no, that pretty much falls in line.
Okay, so there we go.
So yeah, your answer would be like the axial parallelism, right? So the 23.4 degree tilt of your space ball as it circles around the sun at 66,600 miles per hour. Motion without chasing this around. So that spin and tilt actually is what creates your season. So you have the parallel race from the sun on its approach to the sun, hitting the northern hemisphere, and then hitting the southern hemisphere on its retreat from the sun and its elliptical orbit. And that's what gives you summer into fall into winter, winter into spring. But that's ridiculous and absurd and reification of like 4 different things that haven't been proved, including gravity and a whole bunch of other things. And our explanation is, elegantly simple and easy. The sun circulates from the Tropic of Cancer to the Tropic of Capricorn, and it goes further away. When it's at the Tropic of Capricorn, here in Massachusetts in the north, we have winter, and when it's up here next to us over the Tropic of Cancer, we have summer. Super easy.
So, like, why do you think then? Oh, sorry, keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Because explanations like that are more simple for a flat earther than they are for a heliocentric believer.
Interesting how you define simplicity there, because I agree that, like, intuitively, if you look up at the sky and you don't know anything about physics or anything how the world works, yeah, it does look like the sun just kind of moves around the earth. But I think if you propose the ideas that scientists have been proposing for centuries, which is that the earth does in fact rotate and is a body of matter in space and therefore has, relationships with other bodies of matter in space. I actually think it makes sense. I actually think the observations that we have today and the things that we've been able to accomplish make even less sense under a flat earth model. For example, like satellites. I have no idea how the hell satellites would work under a flat earth model. Or really anything that involves, geotagging or any technology that works on the assumption that we can have coordinates on a grid on the earth like that,
Well, I mean, so you mentioned celestial bodies and planets and things, and you mentioned satellites, and we'll get to satelloons and 98% of the internet running through undersea cables after this. But if you want to talk about like prediction of gravitational influences, there are actually no predictions that can be made with the Kepler equations that run that for planetary bodies, because you have limitations like the three-body problem, where you can't predict the gravitational influence of more than three bodies in a system. It actually breaks down mathematically. AIs and supercomputers can't predict it. And then the way to solve it, the way all the physicists solve it, the way you're taught to solve it is to simplify it. So essentially you're changing all the parameters of the proposed three-body problem. You're simplifying it to a series of two-body problems. And doing this is how they got, say, the path of our solar system and the elliptical orbits of our planet. So you have broken down three-body problem into just, say, Earth and the Sun, Venus and the Sun, Mars and the Sun, Jupiter and the Sun, so on, to get our perfect elliptical solar system. But mathematically, nobody can actually predict that. The math doesn't work.
I've been talking for a bit now. Demonstryde, do you want to jump in?
Yeah. I guess what I wonder is, what is it that causes the sun to rotate above the plane of the Earth? Like is there something, holding the sun and causing it to shift between the different the cancers? And
Yeah, I don't actually know what's suspending it up there, right? So it's moving around the Earth the way it is and the way it always has been, following the lines within the tropics to create the seasons as it always has. I mean, what's your explanation for the analemma talking about the sun's path and the sun's reach?
Oh, the analemma. What? Refresh me.
Yeah, the wonderful infinity symbol that you get from photographing the sun every year, every day for a year, the same position, right, with the fat bottom infinity symbol.
Right. I mean that's explainable in the globe model as well. So.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm asking you what that explanation is, Demonstryde. Come on.
The explanation is you're taking a picture of the sun from a different point in the orbit around the sun in space. So you're getting a shifted position.
Why is it
why?
elongated on the bottom and not on top and not equidistant then?
Oh, I believe the elongation is because it's an elliptical orbit. So it's not just a perfect circle. If it was a perfect circle, I would imagine it would just look, like an oval, and it wouldn't be more elongated on one of the ends than the other.
Fair enough. That's a valid answer, right? In your model, that would be what they say it is. The changing speeds of the Earth in its elliptical orbit creates the patternization of the sun doing that. And in flat Earth, it's similar. It has either more distance to go in the southern hemisphere with the bigger concentric circle than it does in the north. Therefore, you have an elongated bottom. But it also changes in height, right, to give us the equinox and the solstice and all the crazy light patterns that we get on Earth.
Yeah, anything that, I mean, I still don't understand, right? Like, again, I'll go back to like satellites, for example, like the information that we get, that entire technology, like how that works. Does a flat Earth model really account for every single advancement that we've had in space technology, or is it all a lie? Like, what does that even mean under a flat Earth worldview?
I mean, technology is real. Cell phone tower triangulation is real. Ground positioning radar systems are real. Tracking real time is certainly real. Satellites orbiting 1 billion miles an hour in space in super synchronistic orbit, not so real, right? You remember the super spy satellite that was from China circling across the entire U.S. recently? Do you remember how the uproar that caused?
That wasn't a satellite, though. That was a balloon.
Oh, I see. I hate to tell you, but that's mostly satellites, man. Right there.
Really? That's satellites. They're just balloons. So all all satellite TV comes from balloons.
Yeah, the problem I would have with TV, man. I don't have TV.
Wait. Okay, but wait. How does that work then? How do satellite TVs work?
I don't know. I don't have a satellite TV. I haven't looked at a satellite.
Well, don't you think that's a big deal? Wait, hold on, Demonstryde. I gotta know this. How do you think satellites actually do things? Because, okay, let's say you're right. Let's say all satellites are balloons, so they just keep inflating the balloons in the air and it never stops? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, no. So satellites aren't anything to do with things in space. They're ground-based systems, just like cell phone towers are ground-based systems, just like the internet is 98% underground sea cable. So there's nothing really having to do circulating above you that would make satellites work.
It's a ground-based system. That's interesting. Where are these systems at?
What? What do you mean?
Where you said they're ground-based systems. What does that mean? Where are these at? Can you point? Can you show me
Well,
what these look like?
do you think we need satellites to talk on the internet right now? Do you think you need satellite to talk on your cell phone?
You do need satellites to do some cell phone communication, yes, and you do need satellites for other kinds of communication as well. Yeah.
So then what do cell phone towers do? What's their purpose?
Well, cell phone towers work on electromagnetic frequency to connect devices together, but cell phone towers have not always existed in history. Satellites have existed before cell phone towers did.
Really? Balloons
Yes.
have existed before satellites do. Like they have a whole bunch of operations going way back from the military, plotting how they would use satellites as satelloons.
Okay, but satellite TV was a thing before cell phones, right?
No, man, I don't know. I don't know a lot about satellite TV.
I think you should look into
That's
that
not really
because
flat Earth.
that is a big problem for me. Because, like, the fact that satellites orbit the Earth and we are able to bounce those signals off of those bodies in space, like, is almost one of the biggest things in my belief that, yeah, the Earth is round, because otherwise that doesn't make any sense. I don't know how that technology functions or works.
How do you, how do you know they're orbiting the Earth? How do you know that their position is as accurate as is radiating down to the? Do you have a transceiver? Have you tested the code? Did you see where the actual signal is being transmitted from? Compared it with the coordinates to make sure it's actually how many miles up?
You can see, yeah, there are internet sites that track satellites, and not only that, you can go in at night and see satellites orbiting the Earth. If you want to know where the International Space Station is at, you can literally do that at any time, and you can follow that path all around the Earth.
So for satellites to be real, right, you have to have them up there matching the Earth's orbit, meaning that the Earth actually rotates. Do you know how and when and if anyone's ever proved that the Earth actually rotates?
Well, I mean, if you had to prove that the Earth rotates, I mean, like,
Well,
I
are you
think
aware
it's
of any
demonstrable by the
or
fact
any
that
person?
there are days, and days wouldn't exist. There are planets out there that don't have the same days that we do because they're geo-locked with the sun, or not our sun, but other solar systems, right? Like the moon, the reason why we see the same moon phases is because it rotates in a way that actually matches the way that we face the Earth, and the same goes with other star systems.
So you're saying that because everyone sees the same face of the moon and it's both an orbiting body with a face like that's proof that it's actually moving? That's more proof that we're not that it's not moving actually.
Why would you say that?
Well, why would you think that an orbiting body facing us? Wouldn't we see all sides of the moon? First of all, the impracticality of it being phase locked to us. So the actual explanation is we don't actually see any other side of the moon. We all simultaneously see the same side of the moon, right? Why do you think that means that it is proved that orbiting around?
First of all, I mean, not everybody on Earth sees the same parts of the moon at all times, right? Because the moon can appear in the sky for some people and isn't in the sky for other people because it's going around the Earth. In a flat Earth worldview, I don't know why the moon would like go away, but I mean, maybe it could. Demonstryde's like,
Yeah.
oh, he knows an answer to this, but
Yeah, I'm not gonna give his answer.
He does.
Right, but
He does.
that
He knows
would be
most of our
where.
answers.
But again, I'm talking a lot here. Demonstryde, you got to jump in. This is your
Yeah,
debate partner, Shane. You guys got beef, okay? You
Yeah, the
guys
only
go back, so I don't know.
No, we're
the only
not.
problem I have
I
with
run a debate server and I made him a moderator there. Sorry, go ahead, Dave.
the only problem I see with satellites, and satellite TV, have like being balloons or whatever. The satellite dishes like generally point
Yeah.
to a one spot in the sky, right? So I don't know how that could be explained by balloons, be like in orbit. Like there would have to be like a balloon going up and then getting traded off with another balloon and the signals dying off. So um, I don't know. I don't know how that
Well,
would work on a flat Earth.
Yeah, I mean, satellites aren't really the biggest flat debunk. It's really easy. But you're saying that you don't know how the moon would go away, or how, like, the assertion that nighttime debunks flat Earth always gets to me. That one's really funny. Like flat Earth hasn't figured out why day turns to night, right? Like, oh, it turns to night. Well, I didn't account for that. Holy cow, the Earth must be a ball. No, it's because the local sun causes the same effect. It goes, closer and further away, and it brings its light with it. You can't see forever when the Earth is circling over flat Earth, just like the moon is. It gets to a
I
point
get
where
you.
it brings its light with it.
That wasn't what Demonstryde was saying though. He's saying if you look at every ground-based like like the actual satellite dishes, they're pointing up to the sky, right?
Generally, in the hemisphere that they're on,
Well,
they're all pointing
but
to the same point in the sky.
Right. So
can you
how
guys
does that
can you
make
guys
any
find
sense
me
in a flat Earth? Like, what are they doing if the Earth is flat?
Can you guys find me a non-computer generated image of a satellite in space real quick? Go ahead. I'll wait.
I mean, I've seen one with my own eyes before. I was in New Mexico, and I could see it moving all the way across the sky, and then it vanished right before the horizon.
Yeah, I mean, like, well, like again, like satellite technology has been around since I'm pretty sure like the 60s at least, right? So when dishes are on Earth, what are they pointing to? Like what is actually happening? Like when a TV or any other device is connected to a satellite, what does that mean in your worldview?
Nothing. I mean, it's connected to the internet, receiving the same signals that I'm using to talk to you right now, right? No satellite
No,
internet. No satellites required for triangulation.
so what are the ground-based dish like what are they pointing to? Why would they be pointing out into the dome?
Well, you know what the ionosphere is?
The ionospheres? Yes.
Yeah. Right. So in your model, that's what they say when we have radio signals bouncing too far off from two distant objects that wouldn't be possible through Earth's curvature. They say that they're actually rebounding off the ionosphere to get to that super distant point, and therefore negating the point of Earth's curvature. So when they say if signals can't be bounced off the ionosphere, if you are pointed up there, it makes sense that you could receive a signal from a tower or a mountain or across the plane from pointing it up and getting the rebound.
So let me understand what you're saying. You're saying satellite dishes point up to the ionosphere, and the ionosphere brings that message back?
Well, I'm saying that it's possible that that's what's happening because when they use the radio frequency towers to send transmissions across the ocean, and they said, no way it'll make it because the Earth's curved and there's no way that signal will reach it. They actually, when it did reach it, they said, no, it's not that the Earth's flat, it's that we're bouncing signals off the ionosphere to reach that super far distant point. So to reflect that, just to receive some.
Well, I'm trying to understand it in your worldview. So like the ionosphere exists in your worldview.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
How? Where does that come
inside the dome?
Yeah, we call it.
Yeah, inside the dome.
Is the the ionosphere is literally the firmament?
Could be. It's certainly
Would
the
be.
rebounding practicality that the ionosphere is said to have would be accomplished by our firmament. Sure, send a signal up, rebound it off. Right, it's a parabolic arc.
Okay, that's interesting. So, what about the other spheres? Because there's multiple atmospheres, right? Like, do you believe all of those exist too?
Multiple layers of atmosphere. I mean, we don't believe that you can have gas pressure without containment leading right up by a density gradient up to the total vacuum of space. The pressure gradient density doesn't really allow for that, but we do believe there's different layers of varying density as a gradient as you go up. Why wouldn't we accept
Well,
that?
because
you
also said you don't believe in gravity, so I don't know how that works. And also, the ionosphere has like I'm not an expert, but I'm pretty sure there's like charged particles up there that wouldn't be there if we didn't have like a magnetic core, for example, which I don't know if you believe there's a core. Maybe you do, but
well, we do believe in magnetism. Certainly, everything is electromagnetic. We don't believe in the gigantically flawed geodynamo model that you think produces the magnetic field of Earth, because that doesn't line up with the measurements on the South Pole and the North Pole. But you did mention gravity, and gravity is a fun one, right? gravity doesn't exist. There is no gravity. There is an accepted measured downward acceleration, 9.8 meters a second. It's not the same everywhere. It's just an agreed upon average. The causal relationship between gravity and that downward acceleration has never been proven, has never been tested, has never been experimented to prove that that's what it is. And our alternative viable theory for that would be electrostatic downward acceleration, where the downward acceleration vector is caused by electricity because Earth has a negative charge by default. And as you go up, there's a measured identifiable voltage gradient in the atmosphere, 100 volts a meter all the way up. And the top is positively charged, with the Earth being negatively charged. And because of that gradient, we can assume that we have actually two Gaussian surfaces between us. That's the only way you get a voltage gradient of that nature. And the downward acceleration is just the non-zero downward vector caused by electrostatics that determines the general direction of down, and then density, buoyancy, and viscosity sort everything else out.
Okay, so a lot of things there. So electrostatic forces are responsible for our downward movement towards the Earth.
Yeah. So like, it doesn't push you down. It's not the force of down. It just determines the downward direction. That's how everyone establishes down.
Do you believe there are materials on Earth that don't react to electrostatic forces?
Well, everything is electrostatic. Everything is electromagnetic. In your worldview, everything is made up of electrons. And if electrons represent electricity, then show me an item that doesn't have electrons, right? Everything is inherently electrostatic. You know, hair, glass, wood, everything.
Okay, interesting. I mean, like everything reacts and responds to a magnetic field, I guess. But that's interesting that across all objects on Earth, we all have the same reaction to it. Unless you don't think that. And look, everyone wants to hear more from Demonstryde. I'm looking at the chat here. So, and Demonstryde, you gotta speak up, man, because
is it possible for you to manipulate this downward direction, or maybe the vector itself, by adjusting the electrostatics with an external device like a battery?
It is entirely possible. We do it all the time with a Van de Graaff generator. We change the charge of a piece of human hair or a piece of glass or a piece of wood, and it goes up from down. We've changed the downward acceleration bias from down to up just by changing the voltage.
I've not seen the piece of glass or the wood being levitated with the voltage yet. Can you tell me where I can find that?
Yeah, sure. We'll find it. You guys have a chat or something now? I'll find it. I'll get it to you, man. It's definitely been done, right? There's a nice Dave Weiss video who goes around on everyone's podcast and shows this exact experiment, which he, you can check that, and definitely uses human hair and wood filings and non-magnetic iron and all sorts of different materials that jump from the bottom of the pan to the top when the charge is changed, showing that you can actually manipulate the downward vector by changing the charge.
Okay. Yeah, wood filing's definitely different than wood. But you said glass as well. They did it with glass.
Yeah, I mentioned things that you would argue are never electrostatic by nature, because specifically in your worldview, if everything has electrons and everything is electrostatic, right? That's the way I connect it. But in our world, everything is incoherently electrostatic. Everything, and electromagnetism is the only force. So electricity can't be separated from magnetism, and vice versa.
Right. So it appears like this will never be a solvable issue from your worldview, because I mean, if it's explainable by gravity and by electrostatics, what do you use to determine that it is electrostatics?
Well, we're providing an alternative causation relationship to replace the lack of causation relationship proved by the non-experiment of the globe, right? There is what experiment has proved that the downward acceleration is in fact this mysterious pseudo force, not force, called gravity.
What experiment has shown gravity exists?
Yes.
Like, I mean, dropping stuff. I don't know. Like, I don't know what you want from
There
that.
was a experiment they did with the plumb bob in a mountain, and that's how they got the weight of the world, by calculating the size of the mountain and how much the plumb bob deviated towards the mass of the mountain versus a perpendicular 90 to the ground. They were able to show an attraction between masses.
That's not how they got the mass of Earth. Demonstryde Newton's first law of gravitation, F1 equals m1 over m2 over r squared, really is the mass of two bodies. You would need the mass of Earth to get the gravitational attraction between mass and the sun. However, they got the massive Earth by totally guessing and assuming it was about the same size as Venus on a Venus transit. That's how they got the mass. It's ridiculous. Not to mention that it was just taken from Coulomb's law, which is the same equation with an inverse proportionate relationship to mass. So if Newton's equation is proportionate to mass, Coulomb's law of electromagnetic force is inversely proportional to mass, and literally is just the same effect. So if you have the electromagnetic force being, even by your world, declared 10 to the 36 power more powerful than gravity, and gravity being a weak force, I think it's more, inducive to logic to say that electromagnetism causes the downward acceleration vector more than anything than this non-proven gravity.
What experiment besides the levitation one can you prove or show that explains this downward acceleration?
You mean besides proving that if you change the voltage, it changes the downward vector?
I don't know if that would be good enough.
That's an experiment, right? Controlled variable, independent variable. You have a control, and you change the voltage, and the effect is isolated. Therefore, you've caused the reaction, right? There's no suitable replacement relationship for the causation of gravity.
What about if we sent an astronaut to space and, they were suddenly free floating when they were orbiting the Earth?
Well, they do something called parabolic flight with a vomit comet, and they go up and down in a plane, high altitude, and they get about 30 seconds of what they call non-gravity, and then they film stuff and send it to you and tell them that they're in space. If you watch those things, they're full and riddled with all sorts of errors, and plus they run into things that they call pick-up pockets of gravity where they just suddenly hit the bottom and hit the wall, but whatever.
But Shane, they have live footage of people in the ISS that you can just look at. Are they just making it there every day? They're just waking up in the studio?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
All CGI, virtual reality. They have what's called what's that? Augmented reality. That's what it is. Literally, they do children's shows. Honestly, NASA is Disney for adults. You guys watch that and you're dazzled and you love it, and it's nothing. It means nothing. It's all fake.
What about every other space agency on Earth? They're all faking it too?
They're all run by the same people, to be honest, and it goes into other conspiracies. If you guys look into the families and who controls the world and where the foundings of NASA came from Operation Paperclip after World War II, when we took all the Nazis from World War II, after we didn't execute them, we made them run a space program. By the way, they also run our propaganda program, so you should look into Joseph Goebbels and all that shit. And they're the ones that started NASA in the late 50s, so they're the ones running the whole organization across the world. All the symbols for all the space agencies have the same symbolic nature, if you want to look that up.
Yes. Okay. Interesting. Well, I'll be honest with you, Shane. We've given you a lot of time, more than I typically do with calls, because again, we want to prioritize folks of your belief. I've got 6 other people in the queue though, and we got to get back to it. I have one more question though.
Dan,
You've got one more question before you go though, because you said electromagnetism, I believe, is the only fundamental force. Is that what you said?
Comparing electromagnetism to gravity and the comparable power of the force, because even in your model, they say gravity is a weak force, and electromagnetism is 10 to 36 power times more powerful than gravity.
Okay, but as far as fundamental forces, do you believe the strong nuclear force and the weak nuclear force are a thing?
Yes.
Okay, so those 3 exist, but not gravity.
Well, yeah, not gravity. Gravity is. What other weak forces are there?
The weak nuclear force.
Right. Yeah, no, gravity doesn't actually exist. You can explain it with electrostatic downward acceleration and everything else. That's the only one that I would question, right?
Okay. Well, again, I don't have. I mean, that's all I really wanted to know. Because we don't have any time left. We gotta get to some other callers. But
Thanks
Shane,
for calling, Shane.
appreciate you calling in. Definitely an interesting conversation. I hope you have a good rest of your day. Demonstryde. This is a topic that you've engaged with Shane for a long time. What are your thoughts on this conversation?
Well, this is it's an ever evolving conversation. I don't know. I honestly sometimes I can't quite follow the logic that's being put down. So for me, I get stuck a lot of the time in the first part before I can get to the end, and I'm slowly working there. I'm trying to get an understanding of each one of these beliefs that people hold and why they hold them, and Like I said, every single person's different. Everyone's got a different reason for why they would, and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there was some moments there where it's like, I'm not sure I entirely understand what's being said. And that's not to say that everything he's saying is wrong. It's like, look, if you want to convince me, you got to slow it down a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, I understand the strategy of saying, oh, here's a bunch. We got to talk about the three body problem in physics. And then we also have to talk about parabolic flight patterns and everything. It's like, yeah, okay, I get it. That may be intuitive to your community, but if you well, I guarantee most people watching this are probably gonna be like, "Huh? What?" And then it's like, you're not convincing anybody. So if you wanna be convincing, I would say you gotta take it slow because
Well,
that's
Dan, the problem you're having is you don't understand everything about your
right.
model. So if you
Mm.
can't answer that, why do you hold that model? You have a faith-based belief there.
That and you know what? And that's the thing too, right? I think if you're in a community that is really into the terminology and is really into throwing this stuff at people, then yeah, people are going to be confused and they're not going to know exactly what to say because maybe they haven't thought about that specific instance of a model before. And I think that's totally valid. I think that actually lends credence to someone who has that kind of beliefs idea because it's like, see, this person can't give a direct response to that answer. And if they do give a direct response, then you can just throw something else at them, So it's like
Right.
you win either way.